Sounds great. Thank you. Thank you, Josh. I don't know, Cynthia or Josh, is there any public comment that was submitted to the governance committee?
No public comment.
No. Okay, then we'll move to the minutes of our October 24th meeting. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Betsy,
Second.
second by Kyle. All
Here we go, Kyle.
those in favor? Excellent, thank you. The next item is look at the meeting dates. So this is always helpful for me to sort of chart out my upcoming year. And these, Cynthia, everybody on here should know that at our last board meeting, we did review some dates and set the board meetings dates. So then these sort of coincide with those. And we're sticking to our normal schedule, not scheduling a December meeting. We do put dates on during the summer, but as we have in the past, canceled at least one, and sometimes right before, if it's coincides this past year, right before the festival, we've pulled back on that just so to encourage people to volunteer and be active in the festival. But Cynthia, is there anything about these dates in particular you want to note?
I don't think so. Hopefully there's no conflicts.
All right.
Holidays, I don't think so.
It says call for an approval of these. Can I just get a consensus on that this works for everyone? Anybody object? Betsy, were you
No, are you calling for a consensus?
Yes.
Okay, I can.
All right.
Yeah, they look good.
Rachel, I see you're on the call, but I can't see it. I don't know. Your video's not on, so I can't tell. Are you okay with the dates?
Yeah, sorry, I'm in a noisy environment right now because my work ran late.
Oh, okay. Thank you for joining. All right, it looks like we're in general agreement on the dates that have been submitted. The next item is review current board members' status. So at the last governance committee, we talked about the sort of the pipeline, and then at
did we need a motion about those meeting dates or just a consensus?
No, I think we're just taking a consensus. There were no. It's just unanimous that the board is the committee has accepted those. So there's no.
Okay. Because for the
Approval by consensus.
for the board, we had to make a motion. So I'm just making sure.
I think you could just approve by consensus. So if we called for by the chair to approve by consensus, well, actually, I have a lot of parliamentarians on this call. Am I all right with that, or would you prefer to have a motion?
Why don't we have a motion?
Let's have a motion then. All those do I have a motion to
So
put it on
moved.
the table? Betsy,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you. That takes the question out of it. Reviewing.
Good thing you
current
have
board-
me.
What was that?
Good thing I came to this meeting.
Thank you, Jeff. Although we would have been 5 minutes faster at the adjournment. Reviewing current board member status. So at the last board meeting, we talked about and trying to encourage people to start thinking about future board members and other volunteer roles. We had reviewed and pushed out the nomination form, so people are starting to think about who else might fill some of our upcoming vacant spots. And I thought at this meeting we would just review and just make public those positions that are we will need to take action and work around for this upcoming annual meeting. It's not until June. The first one was of the elected positions was actually Ron. So if I get this, right now you're completing the term that Amanda had. So yours actually ends this year.
Yes.
And so if that's one position, one of the elected positions. So you're
Yeah.
not a town position, you're
Correct.
The other one was on the appointed positions for the town. I guess Ryan is going to need to be reappointed to. He had when he was first hired, I guess he had a term that would end June 30th, 2023. So that's just something we have to keep track of.
Yeah.
Of the university appointed positions, Kyle, you and I expire this June too.
I
So
certainly hope not.
we would just for an appointment, we would just go to the president's office to have appointments made to fill these positions as well. So if you're continuing on, we'll just resubmit. And then on the student side, so the student terms are all, so Rachel and Colby are 1-year appointments. So depending on if it's an extended, if you're going to continue on, we would just need to remember that we needed to do that reappointment. And then Cynthia, when we were talking before, we still have the capacity to add one additional position for the general membership voting for so one more position that could be
I think we have 2.
Oh. For how many?
But I don't have my list right in front of me.
Huh. Okay. So we would have.
I want to
6
say we currently have 14, but I can verify that.
And we have the capacity to go to 16.
Yes.
Okay. Have we ever been at 16?
Well, when the board first started, we were 19 board members, then we went down to 15. And then when we brought in the additional student, we went to 16.
Yeah, and we do currently have 14 according to my list. So
Okay. So if I guess in theory, if everybody would just took on a reappointment or was up for nomination for this upcoming year for another term, we would still have up to 2 positions available that we could add board members. So this process of encouraging new board members or the consideration of new board members is very important to us. I think Kyle mentioned at our last board meeting too, the need to really enhance some of our diversity and think differently about our board and some of the talent that we need. At the next meeting, I think, which is in January, we'll review the grid of our current board members and sort of what the talents that they bring, and sort of that's at that point in January, we have to get pretty serious about who else we're going to pull into the board, because the timeline goes pretty quick between that and by the time we get to the June meeting. Anything else, Cynthia, that we should cover for that? And we're sort of keeping a list on the side, so as names and stuff come up, that people advance for potential nomination, we'll be able to talk about that list at the January meeting, right?
Yes. Yep. I think that covers it for our current board members.
Okay. The next item, number 6, is review board assessment form. Now, as I said, you guys have, some of you have seen this year after year, and it gets tweaked every once in a while. And I really want to make sure we're looking at this to make that it is addressing what we need. This is the form that sort of reviews how the board is doing, gives, we try to encourage 100% participation by our board members, and that it is then submitted by email to Kyle to collect all these. It has a number of questions. It's a very standard format. I know several boards that use a similar survey tool to elicit information from people, but I have the privilege of having several presidents on this call. How useful has it been for you, and how have we used input or feedback that we've gotten from this instrument to change the way we do business? Diana?
I do feel like we've used feedback as far as, especially things like, you know, the setup of the board and things like that. So I do feel we've used some feedback. And it was funny because when I was reading over it again last night, I thought to myself, it sounds good when I'm reading it, but when I'm doing it is when I think about, oh, you know, is there something else, or is this easy or hard to do? And it made me wonder if part of the assessment this year, we might want to ask people as they're filling it out and it's fresh in their mind, you know, how they felt about the questions and if they felt it was useful information. I just thought that might be a great way to get new feedback, because this is a form that June and I had worked on quite a few years ago. So I just didn't know. And like I said, when I read it, it sounded good, but I remember when I was doing it, there were times that questions, I just felt like maybe didn't apply at the time or whatever. So I just didn't know if that might be a direction we might want to take to ask the people filling it out how they feel at the time they're doing it.
Could you add that to additional comments somehow?
Yeah, possibly.
Kyle, when you assemble these, and then there's a report to the full board about this, gleaned from this. I can't remember. You just do we do an oral report, or is that also, did you also do a written report?
This past year, I did a brief written report to the executive committee.
That's right.
But we did not present that written report to the full board. I just did an oral report to the board. I felt, I think the feedback from that particular form, I don't know. I guess my takeaway generally is that I think the board, there are different people on the board get different things out of their time on the board. So for some, it's much more event driven. For others, it might be, more sort of the, the structure and the business focus of it. So again, I think it can be difficult. I think that's part of what framed my evaluation was, that I really just tried to find the outliers, because again, I think for the most part, the perception across the board was pretty consistent. So I tried to focus on some of the high and low points. And so generally speaking, I might have, just framed a couple themes of the evaluation based on the feedback that was received from a couple key people. And again, not really focusing on any individual in particular. I think there were instances where there were folks that said they had provided feedback year after year, sort of the same feedback. and so I think that's valuable, whether or not they feel they're being heard or not, I think is, is important to try to realize, but no, I mean, I think generally it accomplishes what we needed to accomplish.
Ron, I think Ron, you had a question, then Betsy.
Well, it's sort of a question and sort of a comment, and I'm not sure where to place it. But under the first section, determining mission and setting strategy, question 4, the board uses planning input from staff, community, and person serves. That's fine. But I wonder if in a broader sense, somewhere having the board seeks community input and input from persons served. Not just in planning and setting strategy, but in its general functions. Just a thought, and I'm not strongly advocating that, but it just occurred to me. Whether the board should be proactive in seeking community input.
Huh, that's, I'm glad you put your fresh eyes on this.
Yeah.
That's a. Huh. I think that certainly is an intent of the board that we're gathering community input.
Yeah.
It's actually, as I read this quickly, I'm not seeing that as well.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something we could just look at before. I don't know if anybody else has a comment on that, but I know that is part of our charge, is to gather input.
Yeah,
in a proactive way.
I'll jump in. I think we give the community a lot of opportunity to provide input by volunteering and participating and offering to be a part of the various events that are being held. I think as we saw in the strategic plan, I mean, we held open houses on multiple occasions. I think the attendance was predictable, I guess. So again, I want to be cognizant of the necessity for us to be responsive to the community that the partnership is working on behalf of relative to the downtown. But I also want to be respectful of the people that are putting in the actual hours,
Yeah.
the work that we're doing, and not have it circumvented by ideas.
Yeah, so you're maybe if I can, and Betsy, we'll get back. We'll
Yeah,
get to
no
the next
problem.
topic, but Kyle, on number 4, it's that the board uses planning input, and you're just saying that we don't have to that we do gather it, we do take input very seriously, and we have various methods to collect that, and that we may not necessarily have to grade ourselves on how actively we're out there seeking input, that it's sort of built into what we do.
Yeah, I mean, the social events are information gathering. The festival is information gathering. We don't have a booth because 4 of us like to stand there in the cold and hold the tent down. We stand there because we actually get quite a bit of traffic and quite a number of people that'll come by and say, what do you do again? And oh, all right, well, here's my list, here's my list of things that I'd like to, that we'd like to talk to you about. So I definitely, I hear what you're saying, Ron. I think we probably need to do a better job of sort of compiling what those things, whether they're active or passive data collection, maybe just recognizing what those, what that actually is.
If I may, if we were to change the word uses to seeks, would that work? The board seeks planning input from staff, community, and person served.
Is that a friendly?
The board
accepted
seeks and
friendly-
uses.
Kyle, you all right with that?
I think seeks is a much better word.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'd like seeks and uses.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we could seek
make
it
a
as not
note of
used.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or seeks and values.
Well, I think we're putting, yeah, I mean, I think by converting it into a use, we're showing the value.
Yeah.
That's true.
Let's, Betsy, you had a
I
point.
just wanted to say that I think oftentimes your perspective on the board, and I'll use myself as an example. When I was mayor and we talked about things at the board, I always was thinking about it as how it would affect the town. You know, what effect would it have on the town? That kind of thing. And I think probably people from the university did the same thing, and probably business owners did. You kind of have that in the back of your head. It doesn't mean we were blind to everything else. It just means that we were, what's the right word? Probably a little more in tune to how it would affect whatever organization we were representing.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good point. You know, the section that my favorite section is the last section of board member expectations. Just as a reminder to people, like, what are we expecting of each board member? Right? They make a financial contribution, are they attending meetings, are they volunteering? I think that's gathers good input. But even in terms of like seeking community input, like that's each of our roles too. It's not just the board, but we have to embody that as members. So we'll continue. I like the adjustment. Thank you for bringing that up, Ron. Now, the next step is, because we don't have a board meeting coming up, when will this be introduced? When is this sent out to the board? And is that done by you, Cynthia? You send it out to the board and ask it to be completed for Kyle's, for us to submit it to Kyle. But I remember last year as the governance chair, sort of pursuing a couple of people, giving some nudges to make sure it got in. What's that schedule like?
Yeah, so the schedule is that it would go out with the board packet, which for the January meeting, which is January 5th. And then, you know, I'd probably send it separately as well, and then people would get comments back to Kyle. He would bring his evaluation of the comments to the January governance committee meeting, and then governance committee would discuss, and then a report would be given to the full board at the February meeting.
Okay. Great. That's before we leave this topic, though, Betsy, you know, your point is well taken, and you know, Rachel and Colby will, you know, they're bringing from the students' perspective too.
Exactly.
And you know, this will be the first time we have 2 students filling it out, and I'm kind of interested, you know, to sort of see that the perspective of how do students see this board. Because I can't believe we're already starting to think about next year, recruit, you know, next year's students, or you know, a year goes by really quickly. I'd like to get your feedback, Rachel, and Colby's as well, as to how students can feel and be impactful contributors to this board. So,
Hi,
So, yeah.
sorry,
Hey,
my
Rick.
internet cut out before, and that happened to a bunch of people around me as well at UConn. So I was thinking, I still have to meet with the Director of External Affairs in USG. He had to cancel the meeting we had planned. So sometime over the next week and a half or so, I believe I'll be meeting up with him. And then also I could ask the president of USG if there's anyone he knows who might be interested in joining the board. And I can keep an eye out for anyone that I know that I think may be a good candidate.
Perfect. And yeah, if you can have those conversations before the end of the semester, that'd be great. And then when we reconvene in January for our meeting, we can bring those to the table then. Perfect timing. All right, moving. Is there any other conversation about the survey? No, then we'll move on to the executive director job description. So we have job description attached. Now, approved by the Partnership Governance Committee on 2017. And the board in wow, it's been that time goes fast. So again, this is one of those housekeeping things that is just good to review occasionally. I think bringing it up and then getting this updated with the new dates given all that we've gone through with the strategic planning and sort of the changing needs and dynamics during COVID. I'd really like for us to take a look at this. And so I wanted to introduce it at this meeting, but this doesn't have to be approved. So let's introduce it now and approve it at the next meeting. But wanted to make sure everybody had a copy of it. Cynthia, did you have any comments on how you would want to introduce this, or any changes that you've submitted for your job description?
Yeah, I haven't changed it at all. You know, as you said, Frank, you know, way to introduce it today would be great if there would be one or two committee members that could work with me on this so that there's some more objectivity to it. So, you know, I could sort of do an initial draft. And then if there's one or two board members that might be able to work with me, you know, between now and mid-January, I'm sorry, committee members, that would be great. So I don't know if there's any volunteers.
I volunteer.
Betsy and Diana.
Mhm.
That'd be
Excellent.
great.
Thank you.
But I'd like, you know, for the Yukon people, Kyle and Sean and I should look at it just from our experiences and how we lay things out. I think, Ron, you probably have some experiences of seeing some town job descriptions too, employee job descriptions, that just to see the format, and are we sharing what we need to give good guidance to our executive director. But my first look at it and review last night, I was like, oh, this is good. And I always like to look at the job description and then what goals are the typical goals for that position. So to make sure that the language is consistent and the expectations are in practice, the practices match up with the expectations as written in the job description. So if everybody could maybe look at it a little bit deeper on this committee, that would be helpful. But if Diana and Betsy, if you guys could circle in with Cynthia specifically to give her some sounding board, that would be great. And then we'll if there's any changes or anything, we'll discuss those at our upcoming meeting in January.
Just wondering if the references to Stores Center should be changed to downtown stores at this point in the job description.
That would probably be one of the things. Yes.
That might be good.
Let's add that. If you could do it and track changes,
Yep.
that would be helpful. And again, we're gonna approve it. Oh, sorry, we're gonna approve it in committee and then take it to the board at that next meeting so that we have a new date stamp on it.
I have just a stylistic suggestion in the, under strategic planning, organizational development and program delivery. In that first paragraph, there's a sentence, manages and supports store center or downtown stores economic development. Then we go on in that same paragraph, the executive director also manages a certain fee. Make that, the executive director part, a separate paragraph. It merits just being separate. So,
Yep. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Good. If anybody else sees anything, you can, why don't you send it directly to Cynthia for as a central repository on comments on that. Sean, I'm glad you're able to, thank you for joining us. We are cruising through this agenda, but you can always catch up with me later on what happened during the meeting.
Okay, thanks, Frank. 4 o'clock is often a problem for me these days.
Yeah, it's and it's getting dark. Crazy time of year. There were so we just completed, introduced the executive director job description. We're gonna have a chance to talk about that again at our January meeting. And we're on to the update on strategic action plan working groups. And I was hoping we might have a quick, as part of that, just mention the holiday gathering as well. That's the next activity of our board. I don't know, do we have any updates that Cynthia, Sean, or Kyle you want to provide?
I could start with my group. We did not meet. We canceled the meeting. We're scheduled to meet again coming up. So nothing new to report since our last governance meeting. I understand staff are working on some of the action items from our last meeting. We should have an update to provide at our next governance meeting.
Great. Cynthia, we had a meeting today of our property and business owners work group. But we were really just talking about the driving attendance to the reception. Did you want to provide any update there?
Just that Steve and Betsy, we haven't heard from you, so I don't know if you can attend or put you on the spot. But yeah, we've got about 23 people attending, and of which about 16 are going to the basketball game. So tomorrow, Wednesday's the deadline.
It's in the evening, right?
It is.
And I don't drive at night anymore.
Yeah.
So forgive me, but that's what happens when you get old.
All right. It's good to have some attendance in that. We just gonna we'll have a brief program, just a couple remarks at the start, acknowledging some efforts of both volunteers and board members, but also community members. So looking forward to that. Anything else on the work groups?
Nothing.
Sean?
Nope.
Oh, can I ask Sean a question?
Sure.
Sean, do you mind if I just give a couple quick updates on the staff side?
No,
Okay.
I wouldn't know about them, so feel free.
So Denise did put up and I might have sent this in the board, what I sent to the board anyway. The window clings, we did put some of those up on a couple of the available spaces. So I think it's helped. It's sort of an interim step, if you remember some of the conversation about trying to make those more vibrant. And then Sean, Denise has been doing some work with the School of Fine Arts through the art department, about doing some work, some artwork in the spring. So she has a meeting, I think, next week. And then Denise is also trying to schedule the steering committee out of the working group with Rachel and Colby and Karen, a few others. So she's waiting on some dates there. So there's a little bit of December work going on.
Cynthia, could I ask you a quick question? How many empty stores do we have at this point, or empty offices or stores?
I'm trying to do this off the top of my head. I want to say 8 or so.
Oh, okay.
8 or 7, 11. Chase will not be opening as soon as we had hoped. It's going to be the spring now. So if you've seen the signage out there, it looks pretty much ready to go, but they haven't been working on it for a little while. So I think there's,
Now,
just.
which one is that, Cyn?
So Chase Bank, which is going
Oh,
in the
yeah.
Ruger. Yeah. So.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Well, I think that's a wrap on the working groups. Our next meeting is until January 24th. Thank you for putting that in personal or virtual, but I think we've sort of defined that they're going to be virtual with a very occasional in person. So let's just confirm here with all involved that it'll be a virtual meeting for the January 24th. We may have some, we'll be going over the pipeline and other things for the board in anticipation of board recruitment, but I think we can still have those conversations online, virtual. All right.
I have a quick question, a quick
Yeah,
statement.
Betsy.
I think the rest of us should give Frank a round of applause because this meeting only took 40 minutes. Well
Thank
done.
you. It would have been 35 if I didn't mess up right in the beginning with.
I don't remember that.
all of the minutes. I'll get better. I keep practicing.
You're good.
Well, I'd like to, if somebody's like to make a motion, I'm ready to adjourn.
I will
So
do that
moved.
motion to adjourn.
That's it.
Second.
I heard Diana. All in favor?
Aye.
All in favor of Cynthia going off to a basketball game?
Yeah. Cheer on Brown.
Thanks, everyone, for doing this.